Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have each and every one of you. We're going to go for over a few housekeeping items before we begin, and while we let others join us in the room. My name is Reagan Copeland. I am Duval County Public Schools Family Engagement Supervisor and thrilled to be leading the Parent Academy in partnership with today's Human Resource Department. Joining me today is Susan Thorburn. She is a supervisor within our Human Resource and Employee Support Department, along with her support with Cherise Richardson. Along the way through today's presentation, we expect questions and thoughts and ideas, and those are all welcome. Once you think about them or think of them, place them in the chat. Put them there so you don't forget, because I assure you, if you're wondering it, so is someone else. So put them there, and when we finish today's presentation, at the end, we will go through them one at a time and make sure that your questions and ideas are addressed with the group. Otherwise, we will be in the chat at the end asking you for feedback based on today's course. If there's another topic that you would like to know more about, please let us know and we will be happy to oblige. All right, without further ado, I am going to hand today's presentation over to Ms. Susan Thorburn.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? My name is Susan Thorburn. I'm with Human Resources. We're so thrilled to be here today interfacing with our wonderful folks in Duval County Public Schools, those that desire to volunteer in our schools. Your service is invaluable. Going back, the history of my relationship with Duval County Public Schools, I did volunteer. I served as a PTA president, a SAC chairperson, as well as volunteering at the school and eventually leading to a part-time position. And then today I'm the supervisor of human resources for employee support. The beginning of this school year, 24-25, we had a little rearrangement of our volunteer services. So part of the volunteer service process has been split out to human resources. And with that, we own the process that relates to volunteer applications and the process. I have my wonderful assistant here, as you'll see on the first slide, our support technician for volunteering, and the background screening office is Cherise Richardson. You will see that our information is on the screen regarding our email addresses. If you have a question that you think of later, my name is, again, Susan Thorburn, and I tell people that's Thor like the Avenger, burn like ouch. So I'm a Thor, not a thorn. Helps you remember Thorburn S for Susan. And our extensions are always at duvalschools.org. Cherise Richardson, hers a little tricky because I messed it up myself this morning. It's Richardson, but the N is not shown in her email. So it's Richardso and then S for Cherise, the numeral 2 at duvalschools.org. And again, welcome everyone. So today's topic, as we move on in the slides, is how to become a Duval County Public School volunteer. The services we provide in HR relate to setting you up as a volunteer. And we do have a volunteer email box. We also encourage you to email us instead of telephoning, because a lot of times our lines are busy, and therefore you become frustrated, and we don't want you to be frustrated. We want you to be fully involved in our schools and to help assist our wonderful educators to moving forward and making Team Duval the best school system it can be. We'd like to go from that B grade to an A grade. We're always wanting to go higher. So the website is duvalschools.org/volunteer. Okay, so one may say, I used to be able to just go in the school and volunteer. Well, it's a different day and time, and our number one priority in Duval County is school safety. We have a detailed school safety plan that we've instituted this year, and we want to make sure that every student feels safe in their environment, so then they can learn. So who needs to apply to be a volunteer? So any person who may come in contact with students in a volunteer role, and that could be in the office, the library, in the classroom, maybe cutting out things for Christmas time or the holiday season. I used to do that when my students, my children, were in kindergarten. Of course, chaperoning field trips was always a fun thing to do. Well, of course, tutoring, school booster activities. We have extracurriculars in Duval County, many of them. You should complete a volunteer application. Additionally, parents, guardians, or other parent-approved adults who desire to eat lunch in the cafeteria that will be with students on their own at some point need to also complete a volunteer app. So again, why do I need to complete one? Because of school safety, and I mentioned that previously. So based on school board policy, each volunteer or individual who are directly interacting with students is required to submit an application and therefore a background screening or a criminal background screening is done. We do use a third-party vendor. That's another computer system that helps us with the application process and then sends results back so that we can make a determination if an individual meets the volunteering guidelines. That is a very important part of our process. As you can imagine, with employees, vendors, contractors, and of course volunteers, we must be very meticulous and when it comes to screening backgrounds. So only those individuals that would be a help to students and not a detriment are in our schools. So who can I contact with questions regarding my volunteer application? Of course, that would be our volunteer office. Like I said, we prefer you use the email because of you may get a busy signal. So it's volunteer@duvalschools.org. And so if you have a specific question about a volunteer opportunity at your school, you would contact the school directly. We're just a vehicle, a means to make sure everyone that's in our schools with our students is the type of person that you would want your own kids to be around. So let's proceed. It's a very simple process, and I'm going to demonstrate this process at the end, but there is a specific website address that you would go to, and I've listed it here, dcps.duvalschools.org/volunteer. That will take you directly to the page where it'll tell you about volunteering. We have a very good search capability within our website. If you can't remember that sometime, you can always go to the little search icon, the little magnifying glass, and type volunteers, and you'd be able to find our page fairly quickly. Okay, and this is what the page is going to look like, at least the top portion, left-hand side. It's going to have under Human Resources, volunteers, and of course, you're welcome, information you need, and also there's a frequently asked questions tab that is there so that we can, maybe you just need a particular question and you're in a hurry, and you could use these resources to get the information that you need. We're going to proceed. Okay, we're going to get to the meat of the information. So like I said, we do have a volunteer page, and this page tells you exactly the process. Your volunteer app, you'll click at the bottom of apply to volunteer, and it will take you directly to that page. But we're going to talk a little bit, some information first. So this process typically takes 5 to 10 business days for a volunteer to be cleared for volunteering. And so if you know that little Johnny that you're going to the Jacksonville Zoo in a month, I would suggest you do it as soon as you know that you would like to volunteer, or the teacher has told you they need you to volunteer to be a chaperone. Please do it well in excess of the time, because we all know we have busy seasons across the country, especially at the beginning of the school year, and that gives plenty of time, if you do it well in advance, to have your application processed. Sometimes there may be an issue with it. Maybe you misspelled something. Maybe you left a digit out of your social security number. Maybe you transposed a letter in your name. Believe me, it happens. I've seen many applications over the years that have something wrong when the individual is going through the process and they hit the wrong key and they don't notice it, and then it has to be corrected later. So make sure you build extra time in if you're planning to be a volunteer in our schools. Also on this page, there's more information that we'll get into a little bit later, and we'll also talk about student volunteers a little bit later, but we've listed also the website at the bottom, so we're going to proceed. This is when you click that link at the bottom, it's going to bring you to this page. So if you've never been a volunteer before, you're going to need to set up an account. Now, if you're like me, you have a little book by your computer or some method in which you store your information for websites and for bill paying and for different things that we use. Setting up travel, that's my favorite thing, setting up a travel account, but volunteering is no different. So when you go in and you set up your account, your username will be your email address. So in that little pad that you keep maybe beside your computer or in the drawer of the desk, make sure you write down the information that you're inputting so that you will not think later, well, was that the right thing? We will help you with those type of issues. And that would be a case where you would call the number, or you could always email, like I said before. So you put in the password based on the information. There are password requirements you can see to the right. And make sure that you follow those requirements, because it won't accept your password if you do not put in at least a number. You have to have letters. You have at least a minimum of 8 characters, and you can't put your name again in as your password. So I can't use Susan as my password 123. Those are like some of the easiest ones to break when you do that, or using your birth date or using something like that. So think of one and write it down, because it's easy to forget those type of things. And like I said, I'm going to demonstrate at the end, but we want to talk about checking your status. But one other thing I wanted to add, when you do your application, and we'll talk about it more in depth in a moment, it's going to ask for your social security number. Our IT department and the vendor that we're using does everything we can to secure your information. There are many guidelines by the federal government that are required so that we can keep your information safe. So we're not using it for any purpose but for it to be put in so it may match your information. What happens is, when these applications go through the system, they go out and match your information with your name and your social, your ID, so we can get a result that shows that what your background is. It can be clearer. Maybe you had an indiscretion when you were in college. And so we have to know those things so that, of course, that we can protect our students, and that we have a safe environment for our students, for our staff, and for our volunteers as well. Okay, so also student volunteer pieces at the bottom. Let me step back 1 second. After you've set up your application, and let's say it's been over 10 days, you can go back to this volunteer website, and you can go to in the middle of the page, and you see it's indicated with an arrow. It says here, and that's for you to log back into your account to see what the status is. We're going to talk about what some of those statuses may be. And always you can contact us if you have a question. Now, for student volunteers, those volunteers must be at least 21 if they're external. For student volunteers, they must submit a completed form that's authorized by their parent and submitted to the school they're interested in volunteering at. Like I've stated several times, please allow 5 to 10 business days for your application to be processed. And so there are statuses that are going to come up when you log into your account. Your account may be pending, it may be approved, or those are the two main ones that you'll see. Pending, as I said before, may be that we're reviewing your background because something has returned that you're aware of that we have to review against our volunteer guidelines, and therefore it would be under a pending status. So we review those items to make sure they meet the guidelines. Also, you could receive an approval statement or email also, or you could go back in, or the school could assist you and go into their account and see they have an administrative or a management account. They can go in and search your name to see if you're approved. Okay, if you have a question again, or you can send us an email. We're happy to assist you with that. Let's see. So you would always do that by logging back into your account using the email address or your username, the email address in this case, and the password that you created. Okay, so first-time volunteers, and that's really in this, really not exactly right. It's regular volunteers, folks that are at the school and are there quite often. I remember as a kid, there was always certain volunteers. That's a long time back, y'all. But I also remember when I worked in the school office, you had mothers that were there that were very concerned. They were working on bulletin boards. They were cutting out things for teachers. They were doing what was necessary to help the school and for field trips, and maybe there was a field day where everyone was outside and there was competitions and things. So if you want to be one of those volunteers, we no longer give out volunteer cards as in the past. Each person would have their own ID badge that states volunteer and the date of expiration. This process, your volunteer badge is good for 2 years only, and we'll speak of that in a little while. Once you've received that approved email, you can return to your school and you will receive the badge with your actual expiration date on the side. You can see in the example it has an expiration date, and renewal, we're going to speak about that in a moment. So volunteers must always wear their badges at all times, the same as employees, contractors, vendors. Your badge must be visible at all times. We want to know who's in the school at all times. That's another safety feature, that we are aware who is physically in the school in case something, disaster of some type happened, to make sure that everyone has exited a building. If there was some kind of dangerous situation, maybe a storm or a fire, God forbid. Also, only volunteers that are approved through the volunteer application process will receive a badge. And of course, if you go to the school and you're still pending, you are not eligible to be a volunteer until you have the badge that's cleared. And that's for individuals, obviously, that are there quite frequently assisting at the school. Okay, so let's talk about visitors versus volunteers. Okay, so there are some different examples of what is a volunteer and what is someone that's visiting the school. Let's say that you're going to the school to drop off Johnny's lunch. He forgot his lunch money. He forgot his lunchbox on the table. That would be an example of a school visit. A parent-teacher conference would also be an example. Meeting with the school administrator, the principal, assistant principal. Those are examples of school visits. Volunteering would be reading to the classroom, assisting, cutting out materials for that kindergarten teacher, being a tutor. Those are examples of volunteering. Those, always remember, it's a long-time base versus a long-time base. So So like I said, a quick visit, a short visit would be a visitor. Being there all the time to help out, that's a whole different thing. If you're a visitor, you're still going to present your ID in the school office. At every school, you must report to the front office. Your presence in the school must be known. There are lots of safety concerns this day and age. We're doing a lot of changing of the buildings and the footprint so that there is no access to the schools except through one entrance when it comes to visitors and volunteers and even the staff and faculty. So you're going to present your ID at the front, and they're going to give you a visitor badge, and you're going to, or it's normally a sticker, but you're going to wear that badge at all times on school grounds. So if someone's walking down the hall like a teacher and they see you walking there and you don't have on a badge, they need to question why you're there, because we want to make sure we know who's on property at all times. Okay, chaperoning. You cannot bring your small child to chaperone. I know in years past, years and years ago, that was something that was allowed. It's not allowed anymore for liability purposes. If you have a college-age student wants to chaperone with a siblings field trip, they must be at least 21 years old, and they to be approved to do the field trip, they do have to go through the volunteer process as well to make sure that everyone is safe and secure. So I mentioned, or I may have mentioned, that your volunteer badge is good for only 2 years. They expire every 2 years. And obviously that is because life changes, and sometimes individuals have circumstances that come up and their background would have a mark on it over time for various reasons. So when it's about to expire, you're going to receive an email, two emails. One is going to say, DCPS volunteer application expires in 30 days. This is your trigger to say, oh, I want to continue volunteering. I need to go into my account and renew. Okay? But let's say life moves on and you have forgotten. Now, you're not going to be able to go on that field trip with Johnny until you've taken care of this process. So remember, if you check your emails regularly, know that the email you provide is where those email notifications are going to go. So keep tabs on that at all times so you'll know, or even make a note on your calendar, on your phone, or wherever you do have your business at your by your desk in your office, that type of thing. Maybe you keep important notes. I do, but I tend to put mine on my calendar in my phone to remind me that I have a deadline that's coming up that I need to take care of. So, like I said, you will receive notifications to your email whether you're approved, when your application is about to expire. And the way this system works is you can't put it in 6 months in advance. You can only put it in within that 30-day period. So that just helps us to maintain a set of volunteers that are active at all times, so that can be consistent dates. So that's important to remember. And also, if you forget, you can always go in and reapply. It's going to take the same amount of time, 5 to 10 days, sometimes a little longer if there's an issue. Okay, so this is the end of this presentation point. Now I'm going to, we're going to shift gears a second. I'm going to actually show you the live site. Okay, so here we're going to look at what it looks like. Apply to volunteer. The page is going to come up and it's going to start out. And like I showed you a little bit of information earlier, it's going to ask you to set up your account. Now, here's one piece you need to notice. Existing volunteers. This is where you would go back in to see what your status is. Also, this would be where you would go in to renew. So that's where you're going to go back in. So that's helpful. The link is already there. So let's pretend we're signing up. I would go in and put my email, my password, and verify my password. A lot of times it won't let you copy and paste down. If it does, you could do that, but make sure you make a note so you know where it is, because if you're like me, you have probably 40 or 50 of them from all the websites that we go and do business, shopping, travel, paying bills, the least fun, of course. Putting your information, your first, your middle, and your last name. Make sure you spell everything correctly. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. If you have a former name, that would be my maiden name in this case. I would put that in. If you've changed your name, you can see some information there, your former or your last, your gender, and that's not required. You see those red asterisks mean that's required information. Your social security number is required. That's for proper matching to make sure that we have an individual background that matches the person's name. And as many as I've done over the years when it comes to backgrounds, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but sometimes they're very close with people with the same name. So be really careful about that. Your birth date's another identifier that helps us. A primary contact number, we ask for one. You can give us a second if you choose to do so. We are not currently using a volunteer opportunities page. That may come in the future with another section of Duval County Public Schools. We're not currently doing that. But if you're volunteering at one school, I'm sure that you're aware of what's coming up. Maybe a school fair, a book fair, something that's coming up, and they'll tell you about those volunteer opportunities. Of course, put in your address. We ask for 7 years of address history. Those are also additional items for us to track and to make sure we have the right individual. One piece that you do not necessarily have to do, but it's nice if you would like, this additional information, you can choose which school level you would like to volunteer or none. So this doesn't have the red asterisk. It also, for tracking purposes, we ask if you're currently enrolled in Duval County. If you want to put your affiliation with a business or a faith-based or a nonprofit, you can do that. If you're retired, those things help us track and see where we can reach out for additional volunteers. Also, this is a very important question, and also asking whether you've been arrested or issued a notice to appear. So that is the application. There are some agreements you'll sign, like with anything else in life. It tells you the information about what will and won't be used, for what purposes. For this, is to check to see if you meet the requirements and guidelines set by the school board and Duval County Public Schools and HR to be a volunteer in our schools. And we appreciate everyone when they go into the office, and we know that sometimes they're very busy. We thank you for waiting patiently and being prepared. And we again are so thrilled to have our volunteers helping with Team Duval. It is definitely a team effort across the district. At every school is special and unique, as every child is special and unique. And we wish to thank you sincerely for your volunteerism.
Great job, Susan. Excellent. Families, I hope that you gathered all of the answers to any questions you may have had. If something pops into mind later today or tonight, please feel free to email us. We're always happy to address any questions you may have to make sure that our students in our schools get the very best support that they can receive. Thank you all for joining us today for this Parent Academy course. We hope to look forward to seeing you in the near future at another class being offered later on this month. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.